sex is a symptom. The relationship breaks down when there's not great sex and intimacy because the sex and intimacy is a resource. It's a way to be close together when you're going through huge life changes.
I'm curious as a coach what your thoughts are on this kind of opening up if someone is in a relationship and they no longer want to have sex.
One of the pieces here is that we want to take care of both people in the relationship, not just the one with a higher libido. There are other options, and one of them is...
I think everybody wants to be more sexually confident. What's your definition of sexual confidence?
People want to be confident so they don't have to be vulnerable. And the problem is that if you're sexually confident and you have no vulnerability, there is no true connection, there's no bond. We want to be known. We want to be close to people as we are.
Welcome back to another episode of the Authentic Man podcast. And today I have with me a wonderful woman who I followed and had the privilege of meeting and listening to her wonderful content about sex and intimacy, a topic which I think is something I love talking about. If you're listening to this podcast, you know I love talking about sex and intimacy because I think it's one of those things we don't talk about enough in our lives, and we carry so much about it and we just pretend it's not there. Right. So today I have the wonderful Aisha Paris Smith with me. How are you doing today, Aisha?
I'm doing great. I'm feeling really good. Very chatty as well.
Yeah, wonderful. It's perfect for a podcast.
Yeah.
So we're going to dive straight in. And a question I thought for you was, what was it that made you want to work with people and their sex lives?
Oh, I grew up with a kind of appetite for provocation, and also with a great intensity of interest in how people were living and how they were doing and what their quality of life was. And it's funny that there is all this sort of controversy around sex because it's how we keep the species going. It's literally how we keep our species going. And it's what allowed you and I to be here. Now, of course, there are IVF babies in the world. So it's not the only way of creating like new humans these days, but it is a big part of it. And I was going through a terribly rough time in my early 20s. And my boss was sexually harassing me. And a friend convinced me to quit and to go with her on a work trip to China, which I did. And then she left after a week. And I was like, well, I guess I'll do this traveling thing. And I did. I traveled around Southeast Asia and I had a horrible time, David. I was having the worst time. It's that thing of like, you can change where you are, but you won't change who you are. And so I was now without my ability to work super hard to prove my value. I was out without my community and my comforts. I was in a different culture with a different language and no one who I knew, and I hated it. And the thing also was I should have been loving it because people love going traveling, right? And I actually do love traveling myself. But in this instance, I hated it. And so my depression and my anxiety and my eating disorder all got worse until I landed in Thailand. And there were a few things that happened. I went to Cambodia. I did this amazing retreat. Then I went to Thailand. I did another retreat. I'm a retreat-aholic. I now actually offer mostly one-to-one retreats. That's what my clients do. So it'll be with me and one client and we'll do a retreat for several days, or me and a couple and we'll do a retreat for several days. And I just love them because they're so focused and transformative, and they call us into greatness. I think they also activate our latent knowledge of and wisdom about what we need in this moment. And they have us shut off and shut out, our digital worlds and our normal routines, and they kind of like wake us up. So I did these couple of retreats, and then someone said, you should go to this area of this island, because you're going to love it. There are all these, I think at the time I was vegan, there are all these vegan cafes, yoga spots, it's like beautiful beaches. So I was like, sure, okay, cool. So I went, and I literally was like, I'm going to be here 2 days, and then I'm going to fly back to the UK. I'd been away for 6 weeks. And so there I was in this vegan cafe, and this guy comes over to me, chats me up, and we get along really well. And that night or the next night, sometime soon, we hook up, and he like initiates me into tantric sex.
Mm.
And I was like, what is this? Because I had always loved sex. I thought I was having really good sex, but this was a whole other level. And I tell you, I think what occurred was that, and don't get me wrong, it wasn't that one night. That one night was like interesting, and there was something extra special about it. And then I went and I did an erotic rituals course at this school. And I ended up being there for 6 weeks, and I just immersed myself into the community, and I learned so much yoga, so much meditation, so many erotic practices, and like brought them all together. And I was feeling so much more worthy and so much more free, and was sort of in this spontaneous remission of all of this angst and catastrophizing and really harmful habits that I had going on in my life. And I was having fun. Like, that was the thing as well. Because I remember after I decided to stay longer, there were 2 courses happening at the same time. One was the erotic rituals course, and the other was like this mindfulness healing course. Okay. And I was like, the serious part of me was like, you need to do that healing course. You're really broken, and you really need some healing. And the curious, playful part of me was like, yeah, but what about this erotic rituals course? I want that, but I don't think I can give myself that because I need to be serious and I need to heal. But I'm kind of curious. So I went up to one of the teachers and I said, I'm really interested in these 2 courses. Could we have a chat about which one I might do? And the teacher was really sort of honest, and he just said, well, you can do this mindfulness course probably when you get back to London as well, but the erotic rituals course is something we specialize in here, so how about you do that? And I felt so good. Someone else had given me permission to go after what I wanted and to give it to myself, and I did. And it's interesting, that micro skill of being able to name what we want and being able to give ourselves what we want is like the foundation of somatic sexology. It's the ability to listen to ourselves, to trust what we're drawn to trust also in our erotic desires, instead of it being this shameful, terrible thing. I want this. Oh, I have so many needs. Oh, I should just be happy in this relationship or in this body or in this life. No, like we can trust and we can go towards the things that we want. So I did this course. It was awesome. I had the best time. Like, I had an amazing time. And it actually, just the thought came up now, like it was like being at school again and being a teenager, but being cool and like having a great group of friends. And what I would have loved my school life to have been versus what it was, which was like, there was a lot of traumatic things happening at home. I was having to move schools a lot. I didn't really get those adventurous experiences. So I came back to London, and I was just like so awake to how many people couldn't speak about sex. They would look at me so weirdly when I would name my experiences. And I just thought, no, 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 no. Like, we're all working so hard to heal ourselves. Working being the operative word. And we could be having fun. we could be pleasuring ourselves better, you know? And I was like, people need to know about this. How do people not know about this? And it's kind of free too, you know? We have these tools, our body, you know, this pleasure superhighway. You know, people talk about erogenous zones. The whole body is an erogenous zone if you know how to use it. So that's kind of what led me into this work. The other level is that I am like super into relationships and relating. I think that for me, life is about connection. And I think there's nothing more special than it. I think there's nothing more meaningful and like even healing than it. And I had been coaching since I was actually in secondary school, always like creating these plans and like how people could make their lives better. And, you know, just like totally a big kink for me is like creating a coaching plan. And I was at a wedding and I was just really honest. I was like, I love the whole idea of we're going to commit ourselves to each other, but who does that work for? Because one person will say, I'm actually not interested in sex anymore. I know that we agreed we'd only do it together, but I don't want to do it anymore. So you can't do it either.
Mm.
And of course, it's never said like that. And it's never meant like that most of the time either. But it is the truth and it doesn't work. And I also think it doesn't work because someone gets resentful, because someone has greater needs in that area that they now are immobilized and can't meet anywhere. But I also believe the relationship breaks down when there's not great sex and intimacy because the sex and intimacy is a resource. It's a way to be close together when you're going through huge life changes. It's a way to repair and return to one another. And so I think it's perhaps the most powerful tool that we have to communicate with each other as lovers, as husband and wife, as girlfriend and girlfriend, or boyfriend and boyfriend, or whatever, you know. And so I spoke up about this, and a load of married people came over to me and said, yeah, you're right. What do we do? So I was like, well, we need something on the ground here. And that's when I went and trained. And I was like, okay, I'm going to be that. Yeah.
Wow. Wow. It's funny because you said something about this unconscious pact happens between couples where one of them decides they don't want to have sex, or they're the type of sex they are having they don't want to have. And I think back to a conversation I had with actually on this podcast with a sexological bodyworker, actually, a guy called Mark. And he remember him saying to me, a Scottish guy, and I will not do the accent. And he said, one of the things we do in relationship, in marriage, is we kind of hold our partner hostage in a way. At some point, it's like, well, I don't want to have sex with you, but you're not allowed to have sex with anyone else. So basically, I've just stolen all your sexual resource, to use a phrase you used, and I'm owning it, but I'm also not letting you use it anywhere else. And I'm not even using it with me because I don't want to. And this actually, his idea of this is it's like really a deep form of manipulation, and that no one should hold that over someone in a relationship. You should then set your partner free to say, hey, well, I don't want to have sex, but you still do. So let's make sure that there's someone out in the world, or someones, that you can go and enjoy yourself, so we can still have our relationship, and you just do that part of the relationship elsewhere if you choose to do so. So we can still have a healthy relationship where there's no resentment and anger and sort of frustration between the two of us. And I guess I wonder, since I've said all that, what your thoughts are on this kind of opening up. If someone is in a relationship and they no longer want to have sex, what should they do?
Yeah, well, I'm gonna be honest that I've been in open relationships of all kinds, and I've been in monogamous exclusive relationships as well. And I don't think there's a right or a wrong, and I don't think that just because one of the people in the relationship has decided they don't want to have sex anymore, that necessarily means the options are to open up the relationship. It is an option, but it's not the only option. One of the pieces here as well is that we want to take care of both people in the relationship, not just the one with a higher libido or an access to their sexuality. So yes, that is an option. It's a beautiful option when it's done well. It takes work, but I don't think it takes any more work than being in a monogamous exclusive relationship. It's just different. So it's a totally valid, beautiful, sexy, delicious option if it's right for the couple. There are other options, and one of them is to have warm sex. What is warm sex? Well, hot sex is the lusty, I want to tear your clothes off and fuck you senseless kind of sex. And it's all about the passion. Warm sex is, hey, you want to have sex right now. I actually don't want to offer my body as a place like for you to enter or have sex with, but I'm willing to facilitate a really delicious experience for you. So I could give you, we'd have to learn this. It doesn't take very long. I'm going to give you a 2 or 3 hour or a 1 hour, 30 minute, who cares? But I'm just saying what I would like. I'm going to give you a 2 hour erotic massage. And I'm going to make your body feel so good. I'm going to offer you an experience of for you to enter into a high erotic state with another person facilitating it, with my presence, your beloved, my presence, and for you to have an orgasmic release. Yum. Right? Yum. I cannot want to have sex and still want you to feel really good and to have the sexual outlet that you want. So that's one of the options. And the other thing I want to name that is that sex is a symptom. So my arousal is telling you about the health of my body. It's telling you about my connection to my sexuality. It's telling you about how in flow and open I am to life. And so when someone is choosing not to have sex in a relationship, I get contacted all the time by people who are like, I want to have sex with my partner, but I have no libido, my body's not working, whatever. No, the truth is they want to have sex with their partner, but right now they don't want to have sex with their partner. And to admit that would be a huge threat for the relationship, for their bond. So instead, they have to tell themselves and their partner that they want to have sex, but something's not working. And when I create the space for them to get really honest and truthful and say, no, actually, I don't want to have sex. I love my partner, or I want to work this out with them, but I don't want to have sex right now. And then we can start exploring why. And often this is a concealed truth. They don't know it consciously. It's hidden away. And I have to be there with my presence. And when I'm working with a couple or an individual that's in a relationship, no matter what they tell me about the relationship, I'm there to support them with their agenda. And their agenda is generally to make the relationship work. So I am there to support them and see that through. And that doesn't mean colluding with them to say, yes, you really want to have sex with your partner, but you let's fix your body. No, it's to get real and have them be real with me and honest. And generally, it's not a mental experience. We'll feel into their body. I'll teach them how to listen to their body, because the body is the physical manifestation of our subconscious mind. That's what I believe. And so there are things that our mind won't let us know, but our body is screaming. And so when we learn that language again, that's part of the framework that I teach. When we learn that language again, we can get in touch with part of ourselves that leads us to authenticity, that leads us to truth. So many of the people who come to me, and I'm sure who come to you, they're desperate because they've been banging their head against the wall, because they've been doing all this work and all this inquiry and all these different strategies to fix what they don't yet understand. And so, I'm really pro warm sex, but I'm also pro them having a conversation about if they both want to resolve this. And if they want to resolve it together, because that's an option, but they can also resolve it individually. So I've worked with husbands who come to me and said, we're not having sex anymore. This is driving me fucking crazy. I love my wife. We have a great friendship. We have a great companionship, but the sex has gone. And I'll work with the husband to restore the relationship. And the wife won't often times doesn't even know I exist, doesn't even know what's going on, right? But I provide them with tools for communication, with tools to rebalance the level of individuation. So, can we be individuals as well as a couple? Because that individuation is important for polarity, for the building of sexual tension. And also teach them again how to play and how to do their sexual self-development so that they have knowledge that can deliver really pleasurable experiences for both of them. So, of course, they can do this work together, they can do this work individually. But there are cases where one of them says, no, I don't want to have sex and I don't want to work on it. And for me, I would question a number of things in that situation, okay? But for me, at that point, the only way through, for me personally, would be to open up the relationship. If they're willing to work on it and they don't want to open up the relationship, then I'd say you've got a really good chance to resolve this. And, if it's not necessary. If one person is saying, hey, we agreed to play tennis, I don't want to play tennis, and you can't play tennis because you agreed to only play with me, then I would say the other person has every right to be like, look, if you're not going to play, I'm still going to play. I'm not going to play by myself. So let's create some agreements around this. What is going to be bearable for both of us? Or should we go and work on it? Because we can go to a coach. You can go to a therapist, or I can go to a coach, or whatever it is, and we can resolve this if you're willing to. I'm not going to force you into sex you don't want to have, of course. But it's like, where is the commitment? Where is the devotion?
I love that because, my work with, you kind of said a lot of things that really resonate with me in that. So often people come, I experience this around relationships or dating or even men with the masculinity. They come with the symptoms, like you said, the sex isn't working out, or we argue a lot, or they don't understand me, or I'm struggling to meet a partner. But really deep down, there's this much more layered experience that we're having in there. But I guess the thing I really want to get to is that I see this a lot in people's relationships where one person's like, hey, let's do something. Let's make this thing better. And the other person's like, no, I don't think it can change. This is how it is. And it's this kind of, fixed mindset. I think they have a particular terms. I can't think of them. It's like fixed mindset versus the kind of like, oh no, it is fixed mindset versus growth mindset, isn't it? It's the growth mindset of like, oh, we can grow and evolve as people or as a couple and work on things versus people who believe this is how I am and I can never change. And I really resonate with that, right? Because there's times, aspects of my life personally, I can, speak really honestly. There's a point in my life where I didn't believe that I could be in a healthy monogamous relationship or a healthy relationship full stop. I didn't think it was possible. I was like, I've never seen it. It's never happened in my lineage. So it's not possible. And I can't change anything, right? This is just how it is. And I gave up. I was like, I'm not doing relationships at one point. But, I shifted that and come to a growth mindset and really changed that over the last kind of decade. I guess, what do you do when you're working with a couple that may have come to you? One of them's dragged the other one along. They've dragged them along on the little lead going, come on, come on. And they give the impression they believe in the growth mindset, but underneath it, there's some symptoms of they don't really believe that it can change, or they don't believe that they can change, or maybe there's something else that's going on. I guess I'm curious as a coach also, because there's probably many listeners also experiencing this to some degree. How do you then work with those two people how do you just work with those people to see that change is possible, or what's really going on underneath the hood?
Okay. If a couple arrives and one person is like, yes, and the other person is like, absolutely not, then I'll check that they both want to be there.
Mm,
Because the person can be in a fixed mindset and still want to be there and still want to engage in the process. Maybe they're living beyond belief. Or maybe they're humoring their partner or whatever it is they're up to. But as long as they want to be there, I will engage with them. I will often, if one person, and they might be there with both a growth mindset, but if there's big issue going on for one and the other person's feeling quite free, I'll do some work with them together, but usually I'll have separate like retreat days with the individual, online sessions with the individual who's feeling very stuck. Because couples do try to maintain their relationship through omitting information.
mm,
And it can be very threatening if in the relationship there is new information coming to the fore that the other person feels was withheld from them.
mm,
And also they can have the savior dynamic, which could also look like the golden retriever kind of situation of like, yeah, okay, that's what's going on. Let me help you. I have these 100 ways. Which can actually just bring more shame for the person who's feeling stuck. So, yes, I'll do some work with them together and I might do some work separately. At the same time, the person who's in the fixed mindset can be a great contributor to the experience.
mm,
They can be the realist. They can interrogate what the method is about, what's possible. They can slow down the process. So what happens is more solid and rooted in actual change versus just a great experience. And I've seen individuals who are very fixed mindset who, when they're given patience and time and real authentic listening, that they can actually have quite big profound inner shifts themselves. And sometimes, often, there's a power dynamic going on in the relationship that prevents someone from who's in a fixed mindset from agreeing with the growth mindset individual. And it can feel quite identity threatening for them to let that part of themselves be influenced or impacted by their partner. And so it's only in privacy that they might get there, or it's only after interrogation, after they've gotten the answers that they need, that they can allow themselves to engage with the process. And truly, we're talking about someone's sense of safety, as well as their sense of wanting to be right. They can both be present. But often it's safety. I don't believe in change because change would make me vulnerable.
mm.
And it's terrifying.
It's interesting you were saying, you said the words patience, time, and authentic listening. So I guess what it made me think of is the dynamic I've seen in many, I think if someone I'm working with at the moment, actually, or someone I've worked, no, a couple I worked with a while ago, I worked with him and then we did some work with her as well, where it appeared, his thing was like, he wanted to make this change and they were dragging their feet behind. And what I observed with the two of them was that he was impatient. He had unrealistic timelines and he didn't really listen, right? His listening was all about what he wanted things to be like. And actually that caused her to drag her feet. It caused her to be like, you're not really listening, to be defensive, to disengage and all these things. And I guess I'm just saying, is this something I see in a lot of couples where the person who wants the change is so focused on the change that they forget that they're actually in a relationship with another human being who also has needs and so forth, and that they don't treat them as a person as just something a project they're wanting to change, and they're not really patient with it. They don't really listen to them and what's going on for them, because
So
they're overly focused on the change and the direction that they're kind of trying to go to.
yeah, I hear that. People want to be seen in a relationship. They want to be known. And ultimately, even when people feel incredibly unworthy, I have a real unworthiness thing. And one of my like greatest fantasies is about like being in a really lowly place and
Mm-hmm.
having someone really fantastic come and just like embrace me as I am and all my mess. We want to be known. We want to be close to people as we are. And that's incredibly healing. And so, yes, the greater the enthusiasm of the growth individual is the greater resistance, right, of the fixed individual. And they both want the same thing.
Just slightly different ways of going about it. And I think
Yeah.
this is something, I imagine you see this a lot. I see this a lot, is that when we see the world in a particular way, we think there's only kind of the path that we see, and we don't always open ourselves up to the perspective of our partner or the person we're with or dating, to see the world from their perspective. And this gets in the way so much of our ability to really truly connect and see someone. Like even in what you were saying there, we truly want to be seen and also accepted and loved as we are, for the good, the bad, the ugly, the shameful, all the bits in between. But when we're in an experience of a partner who's just so focused on changing us in a relationship, that can easily be an experience for us of, actually, what you're telling me all the time is you're rejecting who I am and what you experience
Mm.
of me, and you just want me to be someone else and something different. But for the person who's so focused on the change, they just don't actually they're not necessarily able to see that that's their partner's experience.
Yeah. And what's interesting as well is the person who's so focused on change, I usually say, okay, let's go with that. You want change, your partner doesn't. So let's just work together and
Mm.
let your partner do their thing. And when people tend to think that in a relationship, A plus B equals AB. So, David, what's the name of your partner?
Also.
Ursa. Okay. So, David plus Ursa equals the relationship that you have.
Mm.
It's not true. It's not
No.
true. It's David times Ursa. It's it's an unpredictable result. Okay? We know that. But also, if you go from David version 1 to David version 2, the relationship also changes. It can't stay the same because you've changed. And who also is waking up with and going through the day with and communicating with and going to bed with in the evening has changed. And so who she is in response to that has also changed. So just one person can do the work in a relationship and the relationship changes. So if someone is super motivated, great, go and do your work. Don't complain about the other person not doing theirs. Yeah.
I like that perspective, because I hear so often from a relationship point of view, or just generally, I think, and this might be a controversial take for people, I think we live in a time where it's much easier to rock up on the internet, complain about our partner,
Oh, yeah.
and you can find all sorts of places to say, oh, it's all them in the relationship.
And they're a
I'm
narcissist.
they're a narcissist. They're horrible to me. They're not willing to do any work, blah, blah, blah. And we have these little blind spots about ourselves that we just don't see. But we can get all this other validation from all other people on the internet telling, I work with men predominantly. So I see a lot of women complaining about their male partners and saying how useless they are and there's no good men and blah, blah, blah. I'm doing all this work. And I have come across many a time a couple where there's one person who's complaining about their partner, saying it's all them that needs to change. It's all them. And then when I have coached both of them individually and together, the person who believes it's the other person, we see some glaring blind spots about how they are being and how they're treating their partner. And it leaves them like, their jaw drops, because they're like, I thought it was them. And you're like, well, no, it's you too. You know, or
Yeah.
as I like to say, look, we all fucked up. We just got to find out how we fucked up so we can really do something about it.
Yeah. And, none of us are perfect.
Mm,
And we could do better if we can practice being imperfect.
yeah.
Let's
Yeah.
practice being imperfect together.
Yeah. I'm going to take a slightly different direction because I'm super interested in sexual confidence. Because there's this thing that I think everybody wants to be more sexually confident. I once did a poll on Instagram and I think everybody virtually said they wanted to be more sexually confident. And I find it really interesting because I think there's a lot of misconceptions and that's going to be part of the question in a moment. But what's your definition of sexual confidence?
I guess my definition of sexual confidence comes back to courage. So when a client asks me if they can be more confident, if they can become more confident, I tell them that courage leads to confidence. And they'll need to be willing to be courageous, to take action and feel the fear and do it anyway. And that's what leads to confidence. So I think confidence is super overblown. It's made way more complicated than it is. And actually, the best thing we can do is notice what we're fearing doing and take steps to do it anyway.
I love that because that's like the answer that people really don't want to hear when you talk to them about confidence. They want to hear like, okay, go off and write in your journal for 400 years about all the, wonderful things. And those things can help. People don't write down. Journaling is wonderful. But I've been becoming a bit obsessed with this idea of courage, right? I've been writing about it a lot. I've been talking to my clients about it a lot. It's like we all want to be courageous. We all want to be seen as courageous, right, as people. But we want to circumvent some way of like, I want to be confident. Yes, people want to be confident. But it's like, like you said, to get to confidence, you have to be courageous. You have to be willing to face some of the things that are actually afraid of. But we're always trying to circumvent the fear to get to the confidence without having to deal with the fear.
Yes, but this is that people want to be confident so they don't have to be vulnerable. And the problem is that if you're sexually confident and you have no vulnerability, there is no true connection, there's no bond, and therefore no meaning inside of whatever it is you're getting up to. And people can have sex and be detached and therefore not feel any fear or sense of exposure or vulnerability or doubt or whatever it is. And they leave unsatisfied. They did not get what they were searching for because they weren't searching for an orgasm. They were searching for connection. They were searching to be seen. And so skipping vulnerability in order to be confident and therefore skipping courage and doesn't lead them where they want to go. And the other funny thing you said about the journaling, yeah, they want to go off and journal. They want to avoid the situation. And the thing about sexological bodywork is that instead of talking and talking and talking and talking about an issue, say a client comes and says, I have premature ejaculation or I have erectile dysfunction or whatever. I'd be like, okay, do you want to get undressed and we can see what happens? Like, let's go into the experience, Let's see what happens. You want to talk about it, but the best way for you to move through it is to face the issue you're afraid of, to go towards the thing that you're worried is going to happen. And that's the best place that I can coach a client from. That's why I can move through an issue like that in a couple of days versus them being at a psychotherapist for a couple of years talking hypothetically and digging around in their past, which I think there is a time and place for that. I think there really is. But we're talking about sex. Sex happens in the body. Sex is a result of following our impulses. And that's the other thing too, what does the word courage mean? It's about the heart. It's about our heart. It's courage is being heart-led. exposing ourselves, being open, and vulnerability is about being open to wounding. And sex is emotional. I'm sorry, sex is emotional. We want to pretend that it's not. And, you know, individuals who are teaching about sex want to be like, this is how to do it. No, there's no right way to do sex. Okay? Some days we're one way sexually, and another days we're another. And we better just show up as we are in our bodies, following our impulses, so that we can have great sex, no matter where we're at. No matter if we spent half the day crying or hiding. You know, like, I can't think of a situation where I wouldn't, or a place I would be in my life where I wouldn't want to have sex. The only time that place exists is when I am maybe inside of a complex where I'm repeating the same patterns over and over again. And so I need to pause in order to reflect with someone else who can lead me to my blind spots, so that I can stop one pattern and start a new pattern. And I do think that's very important. There are a lot of people who are not having sex right now, and they think it's an issue because they like and enjoy sex. But what I want them to recognize, well, are you in a place of changing your habits and your patterns? And it's the same in relationship too. They may be at a moment of not having sex because they're working on the relationship and they're changing their habits and patterns and their roles. And so something new is forming and it can't be forced.
And it's, I was kind of
Very
written down,
serious stuff.
yeah, but it's also really important stuff, right? So it's like this courage plus vulnerability. And this isn't an exact equation, but it's like courage plus vulnerability equals confidence, because we meet the thing that we are. We have the courage to meet the thing, whether that's something that's sexual or non-sexual. We like open ourselves up for failure, right? Or a mistake or getting it wrong, which is the vulnerability. We have the courage to meet the fear of failure or making a mistake. We take the action in a way that's present, because that's probably also presence was really important. And we meet the experience. And on the back end of that experience, we have had the experience. We've met ourselves with courage. We've experienced the vulnerability and we've moved through the experience with presence. And on the back end, we have confidence because we've seen ourselves overcome fear, tackle vulnerability with presence, not dissociated or not in a kind of performance. And on the back end, we have confidence because we now believe in ourselves and our ability to move through fear and any vulnerability and come out the other side and be like, I'm okay. That went fine. Even if it wasn't perfect, I'm okay. And I was present. And here I am now on the other side of all this with more confidence in that myself, self-confidence, or my confidence to tackle an experience where there's a mixture of fear and vulnerability involved.
Yeah. I mean, I think we make it sound a little bit easier than it is,
Oh yeah, totally.
because the presence is necessary. But so, as in, I'm here and now, and I'm not lost in the past or in the future, either anticipating or avoiding, right? But we also, how do we get present? Well, we have to listen to our bodies. We have to be able to be in our bodies, which means we need to be able to identify and regulate our emotions and the sensations that are surfacing as we move towards the things that we're terrified of, but also really want, you know?
Yeah. A question I have here, actually, I think this is one I think is important, is like, how do some of the kind of societal narratives that we have, or cultural narratives we have, say around aging and motherhood and masculinity, for instance, kind of erode away at our sexual confidence?
I guess the sort of the the quick and dirty answer is that we're constantly being marketed to.
Mm.
We're being shown what a good life is, what a good body is, what a good relationship is, born out of fantasy and consumerism. And we're shown so many images of what our life should be that our systems are flooded. Our imaginations are usurped by the marketing industry. And so it can be actually very difficult for us to be present and notice, I feel really good on my body. I'm actually like the heaviest I've been, the greyest I've been, the most wrinkled I've been, the oldest I've been, you know? There are all these reasons why I shouldn't feel phenomenal right now. But actually, I do. And I would have missed that had I been up in my brain with all of that marketing, comparing myself to how I should be and what my life should look like. But if I can drop into my body and feel, I'll notice I feel great. I feel calm. I feel energized. I feel aroused. I feel content. I feel the things that I'm still yearning for are so close. And all I have to do is take action to get them. But we are taught that we have to look a certain way to be sexy and to be attractive. You know, people want to look good, but looking good and attraction are two very, very different things. And people want to have a life that is attractive, as well as that their bodies and their personality is attractive. And so unfortunately we do get quite distracted. And I think London and the UK in particular, it's a place of ambition. It's a place of keeping up with the Joneses, you know? And we have to be careful and be present to what we're seeing and to know that, hey, when we go onto Instagram, we are the product. And to be vigilant against those experiences in order that we stay with ourselves and we are curious and inquire about, well, how am I feeling right now? And it's as simple as, you know, you got some really bad news yesterday. You had a really shit day yesterday. You didn't take care of yourself yesterday. And you wake up and you can ask yourself, how do I feel today? Oh, there's a story that I should feel terrible today because of yesterday. But how are you actually feeling? Are you feeling good? You know? What's happening in your emotions when you're just present with yourself, you know? So I think part of how we protect ourselves against the what the outside world says we should be thinking and feeling is by training our attention to stay in our felt sense, inside of our emotions and our sensations and our impulses and our thoughts, and noticing what's real and true for us. And practice giving up our story, giving up the narrative to be with what is.
Beautiful, yeah. The stories we hold ourselves to, you know, become the reality that we experience. And we often take on these stories from the outside world and we believe that those stories are more important than our own felt experience of our lives.
Yeah. I'll give you a really little story about this. This is going to seem silly and irrelevant, but it's so true. So I don't have my ears pierced, don't have any piercings, don't have any tattoos. I chose that for myself. I have like a little yummy experience with me and my body about that. And I wear clip earrings, David. Okay. Now, occasionally clip earrings are gonna fall. They're gonna drop from my ear, okay? Whether I'm giving a talk on stage or hanging out with friends or dancing, whatever. At some point, it's gonna fall. In fact, I've gone through so many pairs. I had so many singles for a while because I was like, what do I do with this extra earring? I lost the one that fell. And I was at dinner with some friends recently, new friends, very cool friends. And we were sat chatting, and I was doing one of my monologues. I was super excited and passionate about something. And my earring dropped. And I tell you, the number of times that I felt not just embarrassed, but ashamed. You know, what will people think that I don't have my ears pierced? You know, what will people think that I'm wearing clip earrings. I mean, it's kind of in fashion at the moment, but nonetheless, I would, and also like the awkwardness of, oh, like what is happening? How did her earring just fall? You know, like people trying to make sense of it and shit. And I was chatting, I was doing my monologue, my earring fell. And because I wasn't up in my head about it, because I was just present with me and totally accepting of all the things that I am and all the things that I am not, as it bounced on the table, I caught it with one hand and just wouldn't put it back on. So I just followed the impulse of my body. There was no story going on about what does this mean. I wasn't, instead of being present with the earring falling, checking their faces for their responses. No. Just I was responding to life. I was following the spontaneity of life. And because that happened, they had like maybe a 1.5 second of like, what was that? And they were back in the conversation with me. Versus if I had been complicit with a story about what it means and how I should be, and the earring would have fallen and my nervous system would have gone into shock and freeze. And so the earring would have just been lying there in the middle of the probably the dessert plate or something. And they would have been like, oh, your earring just da da da. And I'd have been like, and then, you know, it would have just been like this messy moment where my shame would have disconnected me from my friends. And they would have also made it mean something about me. Because that's what we do. We're picking up at each other's nervous systems. We're attuning. So if someone is feeling shame or embarrassment, we're sensing they have something to be ashamed or embarrassed about. And so, yes, I love this idea of giving up the story, being present with our bodies. And, you know, you spoke about journaling. It is good for us to be present with our little neuroses and the things that we do that take us out of our body, the things that take us out of our body. What are our triggers? It's important to know those things and map those things. And when we're living our lives, we just got to live our lives. So we're already doing the journaling to be more present day to day. You know, like that's why I have it as a daily habit. I do it. I write things down. Sometimes I write them and I chuck them, and sometimes I write them and I keep them. But it's a way of learning about myself and staying present to the insights that I have about myself, letting each day be a learning experience, but not because I'm nerding my way through the day in my head. I'm living the day, and then I'm reflecting on what I learned at the end and what I might want to change, right? But I'm not stopping myself from living the day by journaling. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Journaling supports you living fully. It isn't the thing that you're putting a focus on throughout the day. Like you're thinking, it's like, oh, this thing supports me in being open and free and present. It isn't the thing I keep thinking I need to do throughout the day that takes me away from being present.
Yeah. And, you know, Stephen Porges taught us, like, put it really nicely. There are different ways in which the body communicates with us. We have different channels for our intellect to flow through. And one of those channels is through words. And because we're all pretty au fait with words, we're all rehearsed and practiced really, really, really well with words. It's an occupied channel. That's what he would call it, an occupied channel. And because it's an occupied channel, we'll integrate, we'll process and digest experiences through that channel. But we won't really have many new, novel, reality expanding learning experiences through them.
Mm-hmm.
So that's, again, a reason why talk therapy is going to help us to digest our experiences, to come back online for learning, but it's not necessarily going to take us all the way we want to go. You know, a coaching relationship interrupts our usual ways of thinking and speaking. Body work invites us into a new realm of experience with ourselves, that it alters the very foundations upon which we see and experience ourselves. And so we need to know how to use these tools. And of course, if you are spinning out and in chaos and not in a good place, please sit down, journal, rest. Don't throw yourself into experience of having to confront fears that have been tormenting you for the last 30 years of your life, right? But when we are resourced, and we need to be a little bit, I'm going to use the word vigilant because I can't find a better word, but we need to be vigilant that we aren't hanging out in the comfort zone too long. We need to get into that learning zone. We need to be we need to go sometimes before we're completely ready. Like if we're at 70%, even 65, we need to get outside and go. If we're at 35 or 20, no. Sit yourself down, make yourself a cup of herbal tea, get out a pen and a pad, right? Go lay down on the grass somewhere. Let yourself hide from people, sure, whatever. But we only stay there until we're resourced. And then we have to live.
Yeah, I think that's a really beautiful place to finish up. And I was gonna just to say that, so many of us are looking for this perfect moment to start to do some growing, to do some expanding. And actually, for most of us, we don't need to be as resourced on waiting for that perfect moment, because the perfect moment doesn't exist. It doesn't come along, which just keeps us stuck in this, comfort of like waiting. But as you said, if you're deeply under-resourced, resource yourself, like you said, rest, digest, get the resource that you need. But we're so much more capable of growth than we often give ourselves credit for.
Yeah. Nice for living.
Nice for living.
And the healing is in the living too. It's not in our sessions, It's what happens after our sessions.
Oh, thank you for today, Aisha. This has been fascinating, and I could happily sit here and talk for another hour or so more, very easily. But I imagine the listeners are wondering where they can hear more from you, where they can work with you, where they can come on some of your beautiful in-person retreats or one-to-one retreats. Where can they find out all this wonderful information?
Yeah, my website has a plethora of information. So aishaparissmith.com, and there you can find out all the information to work with me, and all new clients start with a consultation. So, and that's online, very easy to schedule and fit in. Consultation is actually a package. It comprises of a 15-minute icebreaker call, because many people are nervous entering into this work. And then we'd have an online consultation, which would help them to understand how ready they are, which of the programs that I offer are best suited for them, and how we would resolve whatever issue they've been dealing with for a long time in an efficient and pleasurable way.
Efficient and pleasurable. A mix that we don't often find enough in life.
Right.
Oh, well, big thank you to Aisha today for, just bringing her wonderful wisdom and her energy to the conversation. Listeners, I'm imagining that this is a conversation you want to share with somebody. It might be you want to share this with a friend who really needs to hear this. It might be a partner who really needs to hear this. But please do share, because, these messages in the world just need to be heard, that what is possible for us when we just come home back to the body, when we listen to ourselves, when we disconnect from the story, because it doesn't just help you, it just trickles on through the world. It's like ripple effect. It's a stone dropping into water, and everyone around you starts to benefit. As was mentioned today, we can shift our relationships, but if we're in a pool of or community of people that are doing that shifting, it's a really beautiful experience to be in. So share, send this to somebody. But there's nothing more for me to say. Thank you for listening. Thank you again to Aisha, and to say ciao, ciao.